So we're somewhere around the midpoint of our season now, 28 games played in the league, and things are going pretty well all told. I think this is the perfect point for us to do something of a checkup to see how far we've gotten and if we're staying on track to achieve our targets. So we're going to pan through a few sections like our finances, the detailed league and player stats, and then spend a bit more time on our player developments, including training and mentoring. Now this is still a Sunday League to Legend episode, and our next match is against Worksop in the FA Trophy 4th round at Sandy Lane. We'll be playing that too in this episode, so without further ado, let's roll the intro and get stuck in. So we ended that last episode with a lovely 5-1 victory against Gateshead, and then I played 6 more behind the scenes. In that time, we've conceded just 3 goals, and I hope that has come from the minor tinkering to the tactics. Now, we've also not been as free scoring as we have in the past, but I think yet again that might be down to the tinkering of the tactics. Now, all of these results have seen us cement our place at the top of the log, 8 points clear of Macclesfield, with Chester having a game in hand sitting 10 points behind us. Now we've looked pretty good value as league leaders with 59 goals scored and just 28 conceded. The second highest scored and the second lowest conceded. Now our home form has been pretty crucial to our league performance. And as you can see, we've won 11 of our 14 played with 2 draws and just 1 lost. Now we've defied the odds a bit with the preseason media prediction of 8th. We sit atop the table and let's have a look at the player stats to see what's contributed to that. Now at the very outset, it doesn't look like there's been too many standout breaks performers, and therein lies the story. Our squad has performed quite well together, and this has been pretty much a team effort. If we look at the average ratings, we'll see that just one player, Kai Willard-Innocent, lies in the top 5. But if we look at the whole top 20, there's 6 Leamington players that sit here. No other team quite matches us, with Chester coming close with 4 and Macclesfield with 3. Now if we pop over to the goal scoring charts, we'll see that Colin Kelly sits at top of the pops, 19 goals thus far, with Mbuya Alamanji, our highest scorer, sitting on 16. Now the defining stat for me is that minutes per goal ratio. Mbuya Alamanji takes just 95.69 minutes per goal, with only K-Roll Figueroa coming close to that in the top 20, taking almost 15 minutes more per goal. In fact, there's only one other player in the league that has a better average minutes per goal than Alamanji. James Collin takes about a minute less. On the other hand, Henry Landers is right up there as well, taking just over 104 minutes per goal, and he's proved to be a valuable super sub of sorts with 7 goals scored thus far in the league. Now the assist chart showed 2 of ours in the top 10 again, Josh Smith sitting on 8, with Kai Willard-Innocent sitting on 7. Now the key is Josh is sitting on 8 assists after 20 appearances with those sub appearances included, and he's just 2 off Diego Nelson, who sits on 10 assists, but he's played a whole 8 games more. Now at the other end of the pitch, our young lad Dennis Wall sits on top of the pile with 9 clean sheets in the running for the Golden Glove this season. He's been absolutely fantastic between the sticks with a save percentage of 81%. Absolutely ridiculous. His expected save percent sits at 88%, and he's been doing fantastic. I could not have hoped for more when we brought him in through that youth intake. And as expected, he's developing pretty well. Now, unsurprisingly, we have not had a single Player of the Month award winner. And that goes to back what I said earlier. This has really been a team effort. Now, let's pop over to the finances and have a look at how we've been doing in terms of the dough. Our current overall balance sits at £207,454, with £169,670 made in profit this season. We're currently spending almost £5,000 with our wage budget set at £5,383. Now the projection actually looks pretty decent for the first time. We look to be staying in the green even at the end of the 2026-27 season as things currently stand. Now of course the club still has a little bit of debt, 72,000 the original bank loan and now just 62,000 remaining on that. That should be paid up in April 2029 and hopefully it doesn't hold us back too much. Of course, the plan is straight back to back promotions, and hopefully that will lead to all of this ironing itself out. Now, I would hope that as we come into a bit more money through our rise through the ranks, that gets paid off a bit earlier and gives us a bit more room to get more development done. Now, as far as behind the scenes improvements go, things look decent, but not too great. Poor youth facilities, basic training facilities, basic corporate facilities, and a poor pitch. We currently play out of the York Co-op Community Stadium, which holds about 3,000 fans at any given time. And as far as I'm aware, it has an upgrade capacity of something like 8,500. So definitely somewhere in the future, we'll be looking at getting a new stadium built, one bought, or we're going to be renting out of the Rico Arena yet again. Now, in terms of the club vision, we're pretty much on track with everything thus far, doing pretty decently, and the board are fairly pleased with most things. They're absolutely ecstatic to have me as manager, and why wouldn't they be? Just kidding. Now, they are reserving judgment on our ability to develop players using the club's youth system. And that is going to be our primary focus for the next little bit. Player development in the non-league can be a pretty big headache. Poor resources, poor coaching staff, and the inability to train every day of the week with a non-professional training schedule can be quite an obstacle to overcome in terms of developing youth talent. Now, a lot of the advice that you'll get from seasoned FM pros is to place more emphasis on bringing in ready-made talent in the lower leagues. Of course, this ensures that you have a pretty fit-to-go squad that can smash its way up the divisions. Now, whilst I agree with that for the most part, and I think it's an absolutely solid plan to use before you rise to the top tier, where the resources are almost limitless at points, I can't help myself. I find myself signing youth players quite often in my lower league saves, or waiting for good youth intakes and trying to use those players to be the leaders in my squad. And as such, despite all the limitations in the lower league, I think it's an important point to set a bunch of foundations for player development so that as you go along, there might be that gem that you pick up maybe in League 2, League 1, or a similar division in another country that you can carry to the top tier, to the Prem in this case, and keep them there forever, just to remind you that it all worked out. Now, as I mentioned, with the limitations in terms of a semi-pro outfit, setting a training schedule is not something that I prioritize at this point in a save. I would much rather use my time trying to focus on getting the most out of what we have, as I mentioned in the data analysis episode as well. Now, we're going to start off by looking at our coaching team. And in this tab, we're going to click on Edit Coach Assignments just so we can see the current coach responsibilities table. Now, for me, this is one of the most important places to look at in terms of development. If you've been following the series, you'll know that it was quite a fight to get in more coaches. And that was one of my priorities for a long time, because getting in enough good quality coaches allows me to spread out the workload and follow the widely agreed method of one coach per key area. And this allows for a widely spread coaching workload, and it doesn't compromise on the amount of time that each coach has to focus on that said key area. Now, in the lower leagues, it's not that easy to get in quite a few coaches into the system, but there's a few ways around that. Now, as you'll notice, there are a couple of under 21 staff involved in this first team mix. An under 21s coach times 2, and then an under 21s manager. So using that and getting staff into the under 21s that have a fairly good skill set allows you to bolster the numbers. What I find myself doing is looking at the under 21s and first team coaching staff as one unit. Now stick with me. Let's have a quick look at what happens if I don't. So Dean Winnard is an under 21 coach. Let's just remove him. Let's remove Jamie Barron as well. And then the under 21s manager, Michael McHenry. Now we have the rest of the coaching staff currently assigned to little tasks. So we'll fill in the gaps that they previously were not covering. Let's just go here and say Jared Hodgkiss, cover that. We'll give someone else another role like that. And then what else do we not have covered here? The strength coaching, we'll just say Jim McNulty, do that, and maybe me help out with it. So everything is covered now, but the ratings have all gone down, and that is a little bit of a problem. I'm going to remove all of these, and then we're going to pop over to the under 21s coaching staff. And as you can see, it is exactly the same as the first team. So I see absolutely no point in trying to separate these two. If I had to go ahead and use just the under 21 coaching staff to do the under 21 coaching, what we'll end up with is something that looks like this. Michael McHenry running 5 or 6 different things, and then Dean Winnard covering a couple on his own, and it all becomes a mishmash where everyone's doing a bit too much but not enough at the same time. Now, if you view this whole coaching team as one unit, what you can do is fill gaps in the first team coaching staff with the under 21 staff. For example, if you were only allowed 5 coaches in your first team coaching staff, you go ahead, you get them, and you assign them the tasks that they're best at. You then find that, for example, you might have no really good technical possession coach. What you can then do, if you have a gap in the under 21s, maybe there's one free staff spot, you can go and get a coach in that is very good at technical possession coaching. You can then pop him into that under 21 coaching staff, and he will also be available to coach the first team. Using this ensures that you could go ahead and get in one coach for each key area to do each thing very well, and as such, it should allow each coach to completely devote themselves to their key area so that when it's covered in training, they don't find themselves compromising their time and shifting focuses to other units. I've gone ahead and shifted everything back to normal, so let's jump into the next section. And for this, we're going to pop back to our overview and look at something that is very often overlooked. So every week, your coaches give you a little report on training performance. As you can see by this little green and red indicator, it tells you about the training ratings of the best and worst performers for that week. Now, people often forget to make comments on this, and it is something that is absolutely vital to getting the most bang for your buck in terms of development. Now, very quickly, I'm going to go and click on Dennis Wall, and as you can see, there's quite a few green and yellow arrows popping up here. In his progress bar that we can see on the top right of the screen, you can see that he's actually developing quite nicely so far. If I go back and look at the next best, it would be Josh Smith. Very similarly, quite a few greens, quite a few yellows, and a healthy progress bar in terms of his ability. Now, this is something that can only be achieved with very good training. Now, I'd like you to do me a favor, and the next time you pop into your save, if you are not too aware of this, have a look at how your players are developing. The ones that train really well tend to develop faster, whilst the poor trainers often take a long time to show any market improvement. Now, the way to ensure that players constantly put in good training performances is to comment on them. So if I click on Dennis Wall here and make a comment, I'm going to put my arm around him and say, you've done really well in training. And he's going to say, I appreciate that. Thanks. And he's going to keep training well for the most part. On the converse, Rory Deacon here, who hasn't been training well, he has a training rating of 5.8. I go ahead and reprimand him, he's probably going to be a bit upset. Now, I've reprimanded him repeatedly. He is a 33-year-old experienced winger, and it seems like he's just not having any of it at the moment. I'm going to do it nonetheless. I'm probably going to piss him off, but let's see. I don't think you've been training very well. Okay. He actually took it on board and he says, cool, it's his fault, he'll make up for it. So you can do that all the time, and you can do that for each and every player. If I click on individual, you'll have a full look at all the training ratings. What I tend to do in general, and I think this is a pretty much agreed on consensus, if the training rating is 6.5 or below, you go ahead and you criticize their training. If it is 7.1 or above, you go ahead and praise it. Of course, this isn't a blanket. After repeatedly praising players, sometimes they respond to you with a little bit of a dip in morale. They ask you, why the hell do you keep saying well done, well done, well done? And I think it kind of makes human sense. Likewise, if you keep criticizing a player that hasn't been training well, they can get quite pissed off. So just be wary of that and rotate them. Maybe praise a player every second week and criticize them a little bit more often if they're constantly not performing in training. The worst thing you could do is do nothing at all. So as I said earlier, people overlook this, and it definitely is a reason for not getting good development done. Now, there's one more important thing here that will have some sort of effect on how players train, and that is in your coach's attributes. So I clicked on Kevin Horlock here, for example, and as you can see, he has a very good level of discipline, motivating, and determination, and that's why these things are usually highlighted when you're looking for coaching staff. So if they aren't very good, you're likely to be getting players that just don't respond to training because they don't really care if the level of discipline is pretty low, or they aren't being motivated enough by a person with good determination that can encourage solid results in training. So if you'd like to, you can look at the coaching changes we made in the survey recently. You can skip to the chapter in the video above my head. You'll see that a lot of the coaching replacements came in with much better mental attributes. Now, once you've got those things set up, let's move back to our individual training and have a look at the second very commonly overlooked item. So this little tab here, position, role, or duty for each player, must always be set to the position and role that you would like the player to develop in. So if you're going to go ahead and say defender, playing position, you can see that there are 3 key attributes that are being focused on, and 2 of them are from the defensive positioning. That would be marking and positioning. Now, there's not much being done specifically because of the position, role, or duty. If I go back and I change this, and I'll come down to defensive center, Levi Ando currently plays as a central defender, usually on stopper or cover, currently based on our system. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll say cover. He's got a fair bit of pace, so cover. And you see now that in training, he's going to be focusing on more than just the very basics, just kicking a ball away, blocking it out, defending. He's going to be focusing on some mental attributes and the key defensive attributes along with the key physical attributes. Likewise, this occurs for each and every position. So I've changed a few up just to give you an example or two here. Tom Nixon, now I have him set on defensive right playing position. I'm going to go and show you. It just focuses on his quickness now because that's the additional focus. If I go back to what I actually want him to do, defender right, fullback, on support, boom. He's training a whole bunch more things, and his individual training workload is still set to medium. Now, this is also a very important thing to consider. You do not, for the life of yourself, want to be creating a situation where a player's individual training workload is very high. This is just going to result in a lot of injuries. Now, if you have a very heavy match schedule with a lot of training in a situation where you might be a pro team already, this is going to result in injury after injury, and it's going to defeat the purpose of development altogether. Now, you're going to go through this for each and every player just to give them the best start in terms of the development. Of course, there will be players that you are not particularly concerned about. Maybe an older player that you don't really care. If he fizzles out after a season, which is all you really want him in the squad for, that's okay as well. Much like I have here with Mac Johnson, that's brought in for a specific reason, which we'll cover just now. Otherwise, players like Leo Black and Cody Pennington, everyone is set to a position, role, and duty so that they get the most done. Now, the next very important thing for me is to make sure that you're dealing with your youth players in the best way possible. The first step in doing this is to make sure that you are in control. So, as you can see here from the responsibilities in the staff tab, I've gone ahead and taken control of all the training, including the youth team training, both general and individual. By doing this, you can then individually set each individual training task, and you can ensure that they have the best thing going for each player. Now, if you have a fantastic staff, you might get away by delegating some of these tasks to someone like your head of youth development. For me, at this low non-league level, I'm going to go ahead and take care of all of that on my own as much as I can, so I can ensure that it gives our youth players the best chance of progressing further. Now, the next thing to consider is who goes where. So if I pop into the dev center here now, the under 21s, you can see there's a whole bunch of players that are still here. I would like to keep the squad size down to a fairly reasonable number, something around 15 or 18 players. If there are more players in there, what you can do is send some of them out on loan to ensure that everyone gets a decent bit of playing time. Now, I personally am an advocate for keeping the best quality youth stars in our ranks so that we can control their development a bit more closely, like Chris Whitting and Albi Shala that you see here. What this allows me to do is ensure that they're playing some under 21 or under 18 football where they can, and then giving them some first team shots whilst controlling their individual training tasks as well. If for some reason or the other, their development just isn't panning out how you thought it would, you can then go ahead and send them out on loan. The important things to consider when sending a player out on loan is the reputation of the league they're going to, the squad importance that they hold within that loan contract, the youth and training facilities that the club holds, and of course, the playing style that club plays with. The nice thing is that if you do send players out on loan, as you can see in the dev center, there often will be a loan report attached to each one that will tell you something about the playing style of the opposition and give you a better idea as to whether this player might be developing the way you wanted them to and whether they'll make sense coming back into your squad. So for example, I'm going to click on Anis Uslati, and as you can see here from the loan report, he's playing regularly enough for us to be happy. He's pleased to be playing as an attacking midfielder. He's not performing well in a well-won Garden City that is different in playing style to Leamington's approach. So what this can tell you is whether or not a player that is performing well on loan is likely to come back into your setup and play equally as well. Now, of course, the other important thing to monitor here is the little graph that shows you their progress. And in Uslati's case, he's doing fairly well as of late, coming up just a bit in terms of his progress. If we click on him, we'll see there are a few yellow arrows. He's getting into the mix. He's only 18 years old, and we're going to give him just a bit more time to keep developing out on loan. Now, if you decide to go the opposite way and play youth players in your first team setup, we can look at someone like Joshua Hassan. So he hasn't been doing too much in terms of his development as of late. The progress has been pretty flat. The important thing to consider here is how is he going to be training? If a player is included in both a youth squad and the first team squad, what tends to happen is they miss training sessions during the month. On all the game days for both their youth team and the first team, they will not train, regardless of which team they play for. Now, you have to take this into consideration before popping them into the first team, because if for some reason you aren't going to be able to give them enough minutes in the first team, they're also not going to be playing youth football that much. And if they are, if you keep them available for the under 18s or the under 21s, they are going to go ahead and miss a lot of training sessions in between. So the best thing to do, or at least for me, would be to make sure that you include just a couple of the very young guys in the first team squad if you are sure that they're going to come on for sub appearances more often than not, at the very least they need to get a match rating, so 15 minutes or so, just for the game to realize that he has played and got some minutes. If this is not going to be possible, then keep them in the youth team, let them continue to develop with that, and every now and then pop them into your main first team squad for a easier match day, which might allow them to get a 60 or 70 minute game in with a bit less pressure. Now, the last thing we're going to be looking at in my basic approach to youth development is mentoring. So we're going to pop over to training and then mentoring, and here you can see our mentoring groups as they are currently set up. Now, I've created two very large groups just to point out how important it is to set these groups up properly. So you can see there are quite a few players that have significant estimated effect from the group, and quite a few that have none or light or average effects. Now, if I go ahead and optimize this, what you can now see is that there is a much better spread. So now there are a couple players that receive no effect from the group, like Matt Johnson in that one, Tom Nixon gets a very average one, and Ollie Robinson gets none here, none from Henry Landers, and none from Roy Deacon. These are the players that we're using primarily as the mentors, with the rest being the mentees. Now, there are two very important things that you're trying to gain from these groups. Either one, personality changes, or two, player traits. So we have a fair mix of the two. For example, Rory Deacon has a balanced personality, and as such, I don't really think that we need to get much of that passed on to the other players. The one thing he does have, though, is a bunch of player traits that are quite good for wide players. Gets forward whenever possible, knocks the ball past opponents, and cuts inside from both wings. These are going to be quite valuable to players like Jack Barr, Malise Asamoah, and Jacob Bowman-Clark, who all play out wide. On the other hand, a player like Matt Johnson was brought in specifically for his personality. So you'll see that he sits with a professional personality. What I'm trying to do out of mentoring group 1 is to get him to pass that on to a player like Daniel Baldwin or Cody Pennington to aid their development. Now, there are 11 good personality types that you see on screen that can be used for mentoring purposes. These personality types tend to encourage good training performances as well as good match performances. Now, they vary between them, with the best one being a model citizen. Now, as I said, I brought in Matt Johnson in a previous episode specifically for his personality type. The easiest way to go ahead and bring in someone like him is to go ahead to your scouting, click on players, and then go ahead to a new search. Now, of course, a good mentor requires more than just a personality type. They also need to have a high level of influence. They usually will have one if they're 1, a very good player, 2, are experienced and have held a leadership role at the club for some time, or 3, sit in one of the more core social groups within the club's hierarchy. Now, with that in mind, I generally go ahead and filter this to include a slightly older player, so aged between 25 and 45. We'll then go ahead to pick attributes and select determination and leave it at 15 for now. The next step is to go to add condition, pop down to general, come all the way to personality, and then say personality is, and you can scroll through this by selecting the different types. So as I mentioned, from those 11 that you saw on screen, go ahead and pick one of them at a time, or you can go ahead and, for example, say model citizen, add condition again, go back to general, personality type, change the and to or, and keep going through them. Add all of them, and then you'll find one eventually. If you don't find a player, you might have to shift this determination down a little bit, and ultimately you'll end up with someone like Matt Johnson. Now, it's quite hard to find players of the type in the lower divisions, and therein lies the struggle. But when you do get them in, like Matt Johnson, bring them in on a non-contract if you have to. You're not going to have to pay him if he doesn't play, if you set all of that just to an appearance fee or unused sub fee. And if you don't put him on the bench, none of that's going to happen. But you will be able to benefit from a little bit of influence within the mentoring group. And as such, develop a group of players that are in tune to develop well. Now, if you click on the squad, you'll see that the overall squad personality that is in this team is determined, and that is great. So if players are determined, they're going to train harder, they're going to perform better because they want to win. And as such, that gives us the best shot at getting the best development done for our team. Now, I hope that you have found some value in all of that. It is far from a complete blueprint to player development in FM24, but hopefully if we keep rising up the ranks, not too long from now, we'll be a professional team with more resources, and then I'll be sure to do an episode where we cover everything in depth. Now, with all of that said and done, maybe we can get a few youth players into our next squad against Worksop. So here we go with the squad for the FA Trophy. We start Tom Nixon with a fairly poor condition only because of this little promise. So he's been asking for more game time despite playing a lot, and I've been managing his time. Now we're going to go ahead and play him, and then maybe in the second half pop Dan Baldwin on instead. As part of the commitment to youth, we play Archie Ricketts, Nicholas Sedgwick, Jack Barr and Albi Shala all from the start. On the bench, we have Joshua, Sun, and Chris Whitting waiting in the wings. Teddy Rowe, Alamanji, and Roy Deacon are also at hand in case we need some experience. And you know what? I think we'll go ahead and pop in Niall Clayton as well, just to give Yaniswal a bit of a day off. Let's go ahead and I'll catch you from the sideline. We come up against Paul Abraham's Worksop Town, starting in their 4-4-2, and let's see how we go from the start. An early throw for Worksop down the left wing, popped in and a chance, and it's slotted, but it definitely is offside. Clayton knocks a big ball out to Nixon, who finds the ball down the wing to Jack Barr, who gives it away very cheaply. Now Hall breaks on the wing, finds the ball in, and Clayton parries that very neatly, or does he? It's actually gone out for a throw off the shot. Al Hutchinson, ball into Hay. A lot of highlights early on here, and a ball that goes over the top yet again. So not much possession for Worksop early on here, but they're having quite a few chances. We just haven't arrested any. Oh wow. A penalty. A penalty. That came off nothing. Hansen then. And Clayton gets beaten for all money. So we give him a restart, and he comes out flapping, causes a bit of a kerfuffle, and now we find ourselves one behind. So what on earth has happened early on into this one? The lads need a bit of a jacking up, will demand more, see if they find their way back into the game, and I think that we actually need to be playing with a little bit more width. Let's go ahead and attack down the wings and see if that helps change any of this. And now immediately a corner from Willard Innocent. Whipped in, Smith nods over. So yet another chance there, and Jack Barr, the ball finds Josh Smith. Breaks his way into the box. Oof, almost a perfect finish. Stewart parries wide. And yet another corner. And he finds a head, then far post, finds Nixon nodded over. So a bit more control in the game now. We're having a few chances here and there, but nothing to show for it as of yet. We might go into halftime one behind. They're going to get a bottle thrown at them if they don't catch a bloody wake up. So start the second half then, and still one behind. Let's see how we come out here. I've definitely given them a bit of an earful, and it looks like it might not have worked. A foul. We might be forced into a few changes here just to make sure that this gets done. But now Cedric with a free kick finds Burgess. Will he find someone again? A nice cross in. Jack Barr nods over. Not going to give it too much more time. I'm going to go ahead now and bring on Alamanji for Albi Shala and see if he can get something done up front. I'll give it just about 10 minutes more. Let's see what happens at this corner. Whipped in, far post. Breaks out to Asamoah, then Jack Barr. Back to Willard Innocent. And Stewart makes another save, but that was offside. Big ball up top. One in the midfield. Josh Smith now finding Asamoah. Out to Teddy Rowe. Back to Josh Smith. Some neat play there in the midfield. A nice ball from Asamoah to Teddy Rowe. Can he slot? Yes, he does. 1-1 and we're back in it. We're going to go ahead and make a few changes here just to arrest some control. We'll start off by bringing Dan Baldwin in for Nixon. Roy Deacon will come in for Jack Barr, who hasn't been that great. Joshua San can go and get some minutes instead of Josh Smith. And then we'll bring on Cody Pennington for Nicholas Cedric just to short things up as well. So Willard Innocent with yet another throw in now. Josh Hassan, and it's whipped in. Deacon there cannot win it. Baldwin finds the ball back in immediately, and Asamoah slots. 2-1 in no time. We've come back quite brilliantly in off the post there. A nice header. Just a couple seconds left then, and maybe one more chance before we finish this off. Josh Hassan finds Deacon. Nice ball through, and Deacon has a shot. Carried away. A corner then before the very end. And is Kai eventually going to whip this in? Does not find one of our own. It breaks out to Hansen and now Hall. We're on the counter. Can we end this attack like we should be doing? A good foul there from Deacon. I will take that all day long. They do come up with a free kick. Looks like it's quite aimless. It was. It's gone over for a goal kick. That should be that then, and not the prettiest performance, but we have come away with a win after starting a few of the kids, and it's worked out quite well. So all in all, good day at the office yet again. A few things gotten through, and an FA Trophy 4th round tie won. fairly comfortably after the changes were made. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this one, and if you did, please drop us a like. Also, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to stay tuned for everything that is to come. You can also follow on Instagram or X or Twitter if you call it that still. Now, until the next one, please take care and laka check you. Bye!